Hello, my name is Steve Ellzey, and I'm the president of Your Sanctuary TV. It's a delight to be here with the YourTown folks, and I have a guest that is just a fantastic person to start off with, and he's a very accomplished musician, Nicholas Fettis. Nick, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Now, could you tell us a little bit about your musical background? Did you start when you were young?
Actually, I started as a teenager.
Okay.
I had an interest when I was about 5, but never got around to getting the piano or anything. I went into other interests, building things, taking things apart, doing all this kind of stuff. And then music kind of surfaced at my teenage years. And I grew up as a Greek. In the Greek Orthodox Church, Greek background, and I grew up with Greek folk music and, of course, rock and roll. In the late 50s and 60s, I went out and bought every 45 of the latest hit. I still have them to this day.
Wow.
I still listen to them. In fact, this morning I was listening to Neil Sedaka.
Oh, boy.
Who was a Juilliard graduate. And then my influences from rock and roll. Then I discovered Beethoven, and there was that energy and that inspiration, and it was an easy transition going from rock and roll, listening to Beethoven. And
well, let me ask you this. When you were doing rock and roll, did you ever have a desire to play music?
The desire to play came as a teenager, but as a teenager, I never played. I was not in a band. I never played. I played a little bit with my brother. I remember we did a couple of Birds and Rolling Stones songs, but I was just gravitated towards classical music as a teenager. And I tried to learn as much as I can about music and harmony, and I started composing at that time. And at 15, I wrote a tone poem. It was in lieu of writing a book report based on John Steinbeck's The Pearl.
Now tell us what a tone poem is.
A tone poem is like a rhapsodic, free-flowing piece, longer than a normal song, but not a full-length. Normally a tone poem's 10 minutes long or something, and just a free-flowing composition. Could be for piano, it could be for full orchestra. Okay,
you say free-flowing, so does it change from performance to performance? Or?
Well, the piece is written out so that but just the way it's composed, it's not a rigid structure.
Okay, so it's not. It wouldn't be considered, a chamber or classical, or it doesn't have a name or a category, that type of thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you play the piano, Nick. You have experience with other instruments, or?
I played the cello in junior high and high school and a little bit through college. Okay. And I still play some cello now. I do improv work with a good friend of mine, Richard Carr, and Michael Martinez. We play the Big Sur Marathon together. I do like improv, sort of new age cello with them, and that's a lot of fun. I'll never be able to play the Dvorak cello concerto, nor do I plan on it. But I just do what I do with the cello. And I like the synthesizer. I use that. I create string sounds, which I use at the Whale Fest. String sounds, brass sounds, kind of these ethereal sounds you can get from that.
Okay, the synthesizer, when did that first become part of your repertoire?
It was about mid-'80s. I found one. It was a Yamaha, and I set it up in my living room and had some fun with it. So it was about more than 30 years ago.
Okay, all right. And at that time, and forgive me, but at that time, the synthesizer was just starting to make a big hit because you could have more than one in a band. They didn't cost $100,000 and that type of thing.
Yeah, synthesizers were big and heavy. I think they started out in the 70s. 70s. There was the instrument that preceded the synthesizer is called a theremin. And it's like this rod. And you shake your hand to it. I've never played one, but there was a it was in the Beach Boys song, I think Good Vibrations or something.
That would
became
make
prominent
sense.
in there. And the theremin was like the predecessor to the synthesizer as far as creating music electronically.
Now, Nick, you are a busy, busy man. I know that. Tell us about, have you played locally, Whale Fest or something like that?
Well, yes, the Whale Fest. My wife, Mary Alice Fettis, she was the founder of the current day Whale Fest.
Okay.
We started that in 2010 or 11. But anyway, I came up with this idea of playing music to the sound of whales. And I go, people are either going to love it or they're going to think I'm nuts.
Okay.
This was back then. And so I took the sound of primarily humpback whales. They have the most melodic and the communicative language.
Okay.
And I kind of have a soft spot for the humpbacks. They're very talented. They show whales. And so I do music to their sounds, and they let me play in any key. And I'll just do a melodic passage that comes in and out of the whale sounds. And I've been doing it up till just last month.
So for several years then.
Oh, yeah. This was the 9th annual.
Okay.
So 9 years. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Whale Fest has grown tremendously thanks to Mary Alice and her team.
Let me ask you this, Nick. When it comes to the whales, okay, the humpback whales, you say they're really talented. How big of a range do they have? Do they have more than one octave?
I think so. They could get down really low.
Okay.
You know, it's hard to measure because the tones aren't measured notes. Like,
right.
you know, it's not like you're hearing a C
B,
sharp or a G or D or something like that.
Okay.
But pretty big range. They can get down really low.
It seems like that because they can get pretty high too, can't they?
Absolutely. And I don't want to exclude the blue whales and the orcas. In fact, I'm known as Nick Fettis and his Orchestra.
Oh,
That's
my
my
goodness.
title that I put on the. So it's been a lot of fun, and but the Whale Fest is involved getting other musicians, and I have to call up and say, "Would you like to play?" And then be able to say, "We can't pay you, but we could offer you a great time and chowder." And they're just a tremendous to deal with. Jonah and the Whale Watchers, like I mentioned, Richard and Carr and Michael Martinez, I get them to play keyboards.
Well,
Bill
let's
Miner.
talk about you, okay? Let's talk about Nick Fettis here.
Okay.
Nick, you told me you have a special room at home where your piano is, and it's all tricked out. Talk to us a little bit about that room.
Oh, it's just the living room of our house.
Okay.
And it's a nice room. We had to rebuild it from the ground up because the room that was there was leaking.
Okay.
Flooding, and we rebuilt this room.
Okay.
And I have a Mason Hamlin 7-foot grand.
Oh, boy.
And there's two schools of thought. Do you mic a piano or don't you?
Okay.
And I'm of the school where I have no problem with it, where it just, you don't feel like you're amplifying the piano. It just enhances the sound.
Right.
And gives a little chance to breathe, and it opens up the bass. I placed the microphones on the opposite end of the piano.
Okay.
Where because when you're playing, you can't hear the piano from that end.
Right.
But it comes back through speakers. I have these vintage 1959 speakers my aunt gave me.
Okay.
And it comes through. It just gives you very subtle. It just it opens up the sound a little bit without making it louder.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so we do concerts there.
You do concerts in the home?
We do home concerts.
Oh.
We'll have to include you next time. I'm
sure
we'll be doing one before the end of the year.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, please let me know because I'll come over with a little sound kit and we can get a nice recording of that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And why do you like that? You told me you like to be in that room. Does it feel comfortable to you? Does it feel like you're
Well, it's my own living room. I don't have to go driving somewhere else.
Okay.
And when I have other musicians come, they like my piano, but I'm used to my piano.
Right.
And I know and so I don't have to go driving off somewhere, and so it's right there for me. And Mary Alice enjoys doing it. She's a great hostess as far as all the food and the display and the presentation, so it works out really well.
Well, it sounds like it's quite an event. I would love to have an invitation sometime.
Oh, absolutely.
I really appreciate
so
you offering
we've had a group. We started out with 4 of us.
Okay.
Okay, myself and Michael Martinez. Of course, you know, he plays at the Marathon, Bixby Bridge. A good friend who moved here from St. Louis, Richard Carr. And another fellow, his name Louis Coliana. He lives in Denver, Colorado. And all four of us compose and improvise and play, and we take turns. One guy will tell the story about the piece and then play, and we take turns. Now this fellow Louis, he's come out several times, and he's invited me to go to Colorado in May, so I'll be doing 2 or 3 performances with him in Colorado. So
wonderful.
That's going to be a lot of fun. And my first line when I get up, I'm going to say, any of you enjoy eating Hass avocados? And some hands will go up, and I'll say, well, you owe it to my father. He introduced the Hass avocado to the state of Colorado.
And that even rhymes.
So just playing with these 3 gentlemen is fantastic. We just take turns, and I love telling stories about my pieces. And I think sometimes I enjoy that as much as playing the pieces. There's a story behind them. And we had an incident this past year has been kind of a rough one. Through my church, there's an organization called Philoptochos, and it's a philanthropic organization. And a group of us, we were helping a family. They had an 11-year-old son and 2 younger boys. Well, the 11-year-old boy, Alex, was fighting cancer, a real warrior, a true fighter. And about this time last year, I wrote a composition. Some compositions take forever. This one happened. I just come back from Stanford. I wrote it in about a half an hour, called Alex's Dream. And I just wanted to capture the feeling I had for the emotion of this little boy. And at the same time, I lost my mother, and he passed away in July. Happened to be on the birthday of the president of this organization, a good friend, Alexandra. And he passed. He fought a hard fight. And I dedicated this piece to dear Alex McCrone, called Alex's Dream. And I've written pieces with other stories based on redwood trees, a whole suite of 12 compositions about Yosemite. Half Dome, the Merced River, and snowfall, and a bunch of, and
Nick, would you say it's the natural world that inspires you?
Absolutely, because it's funny that you say that, the spiritual natural worlds. I've redwood trees. There's 2 iconic redwoods in this grove, Bohemian Grove in Sonoma. And I wrote one piece for one redwood tree, Mr. Redwood. And then I felt bad about Grand Dame. Grand Dame's a very interesting shaped tree, a trunk that comes out, and 2 trunks. And so I have those 2 compositions, one for each of those iconic redwood trees.
Now, you say Grand Dame, is that an actual tree?
It's an actual tree.
Where is that tree?
This tree is in, there's an organization in San Francisco that founded in 1872 called the Bohemian Club. And they have a camp up in Sonoma, off the Russian River, and I'm invited every year to look after pianos, babysit them, prepare shows, and I was up there, and there's no recorded music allowed. Everything is live. Everything is live, and some of the finest performers and composers are there. And so it was there. So in this grove, there's a old growth section that you can only get to by hiking. Pretty easy hike, but you still have to hike to it. And then within that ancient forest are 2 iconic trees, Mr. Redwood and Grand Dame. And Mr. Redwood's the tallest, they discovered he is the tallest tree in the grove. They found that he's about 5 feet taller than the second tallest tree, which is near where the dining area is at this camp. So at the ending of Mr. Redwood, I play this chord. I roll it 5 times at the ending of it, and that signifies Mr. Redwood's 5 feet taller than the second tree. And Grand Dame is not as tall a tree, and Grand Dame is in the same grove as Mr. Redwood. And Grand Dame must have been hit by lightning or something.
Okay.
He has a trunk that comes out at a 90-degree angle, and then a trunk that goes straight up, like the way we used to make fours in grammar school. That's what this tree looks like. Fascinating tree.
I see.
Yeah. So
the
Grand Dame is, I did a composition for Grand Dame, and just so Mr. Redwood wouldn't feel bad. But I love the natural world, rainbows, and I have a piece half dome from Yosemite and the Merced River and all that. Okay.
Now, do you and Mary Alice travel quite a bit?
We took a trip, as a trip of a lifetime, last September. I've always, when I was a teenager and discovering classical music, when I was getting past rock and roll, Renaissance period, primarily Renaissance Italy, fascinated me. Firenze and Venezia and all that art and science. So Mary Alice, my son Pete, our son Pete, and we traveled through England and Italy, and to see all that history that I studied.
Sure.
Yeah, and we had gone on other trips to Costa Rica, New Zealand, some neat places, but I'd always wanted to go to those cities in Italy. She has a cousin that lives there, and we had fun there. And then we also went to England, and all the history in Westminster Abbey is unbelievable. Unbelievable. George Frederick Handel is buried next to Charles Dickens. And Sir Isaac Newton there, and just who's who in England. It's a fascinating place.
Who's who in the Renaissance, practically.
Yeah, and then you go. Yeah, and then in the Renaissance, it's amazing how well preserved, like Da Vinci and Galileo's art and scientific tools are preserved, and the artwork is Botticelli, so magnificently preserved, all the artwork. And it was just great to see the science museums, the ancient musical instruments, the artwork, the whole thing.
What is the strangest instrument you've ever seen, a musical instrument?
Oh, that's a good question. The strangest musical instrument.
I mean, the theorem sounded pretty...
Theremon's pretty...
Theremin?
Yeah, it's called a theremin.
Theremin, okay.
Instrument. That's a good...
Well, then you don't cogitate on it too much. What did you like about... How did that make you feel, seeing the final resting place of people like Sir Isaac Newton and Handel?
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
You know, just kind of uplifting to see that their final resting place is in such a special spot, and they're with others of their same caliber, and the building's incredible.
I don't know that much. I don't know anything about what it looks like.
It's like a big cathedral.
Okay,
it was built in.
And so the graves outside, or
no? They're inside. They're inside.
Okay.
They're inside the building, and they're slabs of marble and with their names and dates on them, and they're just inside.
Okay.
Inside this large structure.
All right.
Right in London.
Well, Nick, I've got to, first of all, I want to thank you for coming down and taking your time. I've got to ask you, can we get you on the show again sometime?
Sure.
We would love to have you, okay?
Okay, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nick Fettis, wonderful talking to you. And we will be right back.